Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I thought I would do something a little different. As we know, this time of the year, BookTube is going crazy for the best books of 2021 and our yearly wrap-ups, and I do enjoy that, and I will be putting out a best books of 2021 video definitely near January, as I am continuing to read books to finish my goal and to have more books to talk about. But for today's video, we are doing something different. So today's video, I will be sharing my top underrated or underhyped books of 2021, and by that I mean books that I haven't been seeing shared as much on social media as a lot of the hyped up books that we see that are really popular on BookTube, BookTok, Bookstagram. These are books I just have not seen, but I really think need the attention, so I wanted to dedicate an entire video to these types of books. Some of these might not necessarily be in my top books of 2021, but they were definitely my top underrated finds and ones that I would recommend for you if you're looking for a book that's kind of like you've never really heard before. This is a great place to learn some recommendations. So yeah, keep an eye on my best books of 2021 video, but without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the first book I have here, could not film a video without mentioning, again, Days of Distraction by Alexandra Chang. This is definitely going to also make my best books of 2021 since it was just amazing. It also inspired the entire thesis behind my capstone for my creative writing major, so big props to that book. But this book I read in my Asian American Lit class, and we actually got to meet the author, so I think that whole experience honestly just made my reading experience more enjoyable, and that's probably why it's one of my favorites. But anyway, this book is a piece of autofiction that follows a Chinese American girl as she is navigating her whole life through this big transition where she's moving to a new city. And kind of navigating her job and loss and her relationship that she is not really happy in. This book is just has everything basically. It's kind of like what I call a no plot book, just following our main character through the comings and goings of her life, but it's definitely super good. The prose is amazing. I think there's like hot takes in there about life and love and relationships. And then another thing I really like about this book is that it is just written in a really unique sort of form. So it's written in like vignettes or short choppy paragraphs, so it was super digestible for me to read, and I really enjoyed the story since it was like a character study, which are my favorite types of books. So I would definitely recommend this if you're looking for kind of a short read that's paced very slowly, but at the end I definitely think you learn something from the book. Okay, so the next book we have here is also a sort of character study book, and it is So Many Olympic Exertions by Analise Chen. Have to give a huge shout out to my capstone professor who actually assigned this book to me to read for like personal text when we were writing our own like books for my capstone project. This book is also considered autofiction, and it's very experimental actually. It follows our main character who, after hearing about the death of a classmate, she goes into the spiral of like questioning life and her purpose. It's very meaningful. I definitely thought also the prose is just absolutely beautiful. It's also written in this very choppy style that's very digestible and like is easy to put down if you're having a hard time reading it or like going back and forth into it. There are also pictures, like clips of YouTube videos, because it's like multimedia, and it's written from a sports writing reporter perspective because the main character is like dabbling in sports writing, which I thought was so cool. And if you're looking for a really great book to kind of mix up the styles of reading and just try new things, I honestly think this book is definitely it. I read it because I was assigned to read it, but I ended up really enjoying it just because it was something new and exciting, and also I just think it had a very nuanced conversation about mental health and being an athlete, especially being a woman athlete, and then also about relationships and loss. So highly recommend that book. So the next book I actually have in person. It is Don't Hate the Player by Alexis Nedd. I think I talked about this in a wrap-up, but this book just completely took me by surprise. My dad actually bought me this book, and I usually don't take recommendations from my parents just because they don't really know my reading style. They still recommend me like books that I read when I was like 15, but this book, I think he got it from like his boss or something, but Don't Hate the Player basically is like an enemies to lovers romance, not really romance, but just story about two characters who are childhood friends, then kind of separate and then meet each other again when they're rivals in this gaming championship competition. super interesting. As someone who used to play a lot of esports and used to game a lot, I was super interested in this book because I love books about gaming and like virtual reality, and this book just does it so well. I feel like the action scenes, like I've never read someone write about gaming and playing on a computer so well, and I definitely think this book does it. It's a bit outside your comfort zone if you don't like gaming, and there's a lot of like terminology and things that are used in this book, but overall it's just super interesting. Definitely read it if you're like enemies to lovers. It's not that hard on the enemies to lovers side, but there is like a faint essence of that, which I think enemies to lovers, romance people will definitely enjoy. It's super fast paced. You will read this book in one sitting and then you will not regret it, but I haven't seen this like talked about anywhere, and I'm so sad because it's a really great book that talks a lot about also feminism and gaming and mental health and living up to our parents' expectations. So it's not just a book about romance or just a book about gaming. It's a very great conversation, really great characters and a story, and I would definitely pick this up. Okay, so the next book I have recommended, I also don't have a physical copy here with me, but it is Free Food for Millionaires by Min-Jin Lee. And I know, you're probably like, Min-Jin Lee, that sounds very familiar. The reason I add this book to this list is because I feel like Min-Jin Lee's second book, Pachinko, is actually a lot more popular than her first publication, which is Free Food for Millionaires. So I definitely wanted to add this in underrated because I feel like a lot of people who really loved Pachinko, so seriously, like a lot of people on BookTube and Bookstagram like just love Pachinko like me, but then they're kind of scared to read Free Food for Millionaires or don't even know that she wrote a first book before she published Pachinko, but I would definitely check out Free Food for Millionaires. It's a very long book that took me a month to read, like a month, but it is a very slow-paced, very emotionally satisfying book that follows a main character, Casey, who's daughter of Korean immigrants, and she goes to Princeton and she graduates from Princeton, and then she kind of like doesn't really know what to do with her life, and as she's navigating that, it takes us through her story of doing so, and I believe it takes place over the set of a few years, but I just really love this too. Like I said, I feel like this is the year of just like character study books because I just freaking love them all. Give them all to me. This one does a really deep dive into our main character Casey, who is honestly very like controversial. A lot of people I read on Goodreads don't like her, but then I really connected with her really well. So it's just a very in-depth portrait of a main character who is definitely very culturally different, and she's just trying to navigate her life here, and especially after graduating from Princeton with all these expectations on her from her family, her friends, the people that she graduated with, her partners. So yeah, definitely recommend this book. I would say if you read Pachinko, this one's definitely different since it was her first publication. I don't think it's paced as well as Pachinko, but I definitely think the writing is there, and if you just like miss Min-Jin Lee's writing, that's why I read Free Food Millionaires, because I was just like, loved Pachinko, I needed more, so I picked up Free Food Millionaires, and I was not disappointed at all. It just left such a big impact on me, and I'm so excited. It's definitely gonna be one of those books that I like reread every year as like one of the classics, but definitely check it out. The next book I have here is Reign of the Fallen by Sarah Glenn Marsh. This one was actually reread for me this year. I don't remember what I read it for. I think it was for like a readathon or something. This is a reread for me, and I still think this is super underrated and super underhyped, but it's a pretty large series. I think it's a trilogy. I'm not really sure. But I definitely do have the second book, and I want to continue on with it. But this book is super underhyped. I think this is like the best example of like bisexual representation in fantasy, in my opinion. I haven't really read many books with bisexual main characters in fantasy, but this is definitely one of the ones it does well. Our world in this story is a world that's based on like necromancy, so like this world doesn't want to change their rulers and like their ruling class, so they revive the nobles and the royalties to keep their reign. Reign of the Fallen. But anyway, I think the storyline is done so well. I think the rep is done so well, and just everything. There's a lot of twists. It's really action-packed. Reading it again, I thought it was really cool to see all the details that I missed in the first part, and also a lot of the like character development that I missed, because I feel like in this book, after my second reading, I really appreciated the side characters more than I actually did the main character. So that was really cool, because usually I'm just rooting for the main character when I kind of want to get to know the side characters a lot better. But this is definitely a great example of that. It's just so good. I see so much of myself in this main character. I actually put this book on a list before of books that helped me come out as bisexual, so this was definitely an amazing book. Definitely check it out if you haven't and you're really craving like a dark, rich fantasy that it has a very immersive world, but also just about a character who's like discovering her sexuality, because I think this book is definitely good for that. So the next book I have here is one that I actually just finished, and I am so sad I did not pick up this book earlier because I heard about it in early 2021, but it is The Mountains Sing by nguyễn, phan, mai. This book is so good. I read it with the premise of kind of thinking that it was like Pachinko, like it's pitched as like a book like Pachinko, a multi-generational family tale following a family over the years. And this book basically details the Tran family as they set against the backdrop of the Vietnam War. This book, I didn't really know what to expect while going into it. I think I was wrong in assuming that it was going to be like Pachinko, because they're actually like two very different books. First of all, set in very different like places, but also just the writing of this was super interesting. It actually switches in perspective, like point of view. So sometimes you would get the grandma actually talking, like addressing you as if you were the granddaughter, which I thought was really cool and really sweet. It just made a more personal connection with the reader, which I haven't really read much in books. When it happened first, when the POV switched at first, I was kind of like caught off guard, but then I really got used to it and I was like, every other chapter is that. But yeah, the writing in this, I would definitely say it's more readable than Pachinko. Pachinko is definitely a little bit flowery. It's like on the edge of flowery, but not being too hard to read. But this book, I flew through it. It was definitely hard sometimes to read because there were some very big like emotional events. I will leave all like content warnings for all of these books on the screen before you go into them, because this is definitely has a lot of content warnings. But I will say that if you're looking for a really endearing story, a very kind of hopeful story as well, that reveals a lot of the events and kind of things that happened during the Vietnam War, I would definitely recommend this book. There's a lot of like twists and turns that I think the author does really well, but also just the characters, like she makes you fall in love with all the characters, and then just like shit happens and you're like, what? So yeah, I would highly recommend this book. I'm sad I didn't read this earlier because I totally could have just talked about it more, but as the year comes to a close, I'm definitely going to be recommending this one. Okay, and the final book of this video, this is definitely an underrated one as well. I feel like short story collections don't get as much hype or as much like publicity or whatever as like full-length novels or trilogies or like fantasy series, obviously. But this next one is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. And this one I read, I think, for a challenge where I asked one of my favorite authors to like recommend me a book, and then they recommended me this one, and then I read it. I was a little skeptical at first, obviously, because I really don't read short story collections a lot, and this one was definitely like a really short collection of short stories. I think there were only like 7 stories, I think so, don't quote me on that, but this book is essentially a collection of short stories that follows several different Black church ladies as they navigate their sexuality, religion, love, and it was just a really beautiful read. I don't think I've ever read a short story where like I've wanted to read like full-length novels of each of the short stories before, and this is exactly what happened with this book, and that's exactly what I've been hearing from everybody who's read it. Like they just want longer versions of the book, and they're sad that it's only like in this like 150-page, 200-page short story collection. But yeah, I heard there's like something going on. I think there were like movie rights. I don't know. I think I saw this happening or it being announced. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this book if you are trying, like I said, a little bit something outside of your comfort zone. If you want to read a short book to hopefully get your Goodreads goal up there, definitely read this book because it also just packs a punch as well. So you'll get 2 things in one, finishing a book and also just reading a really amazing book that will like leave you in pieces after. Like I still think about that book book to this day about some of the things that happened in this book. And also just the form, because it also is like in letter form and there's in list format. Like the book just plays with a lot of things in terms of voice, form, and content that I think are super kind of novel for its genre of like a short story collection. So highly recommend and super underrated. I wish people were talking about it more because it honestly deserves all the hype. So that was it for the book recommendations. Definitely leave in the comments down below some of your favorite underrated or underhyped recs. I would love to check them out. 2022 is the year of me just trying new things because I definitely discovered a lot of the things that I didn't know I would love in 2021, like autofiction and short story collections and historical fiction. So definitely leave those recs down below, and please keep updated on my channel because I will be dropping that best books of 2021, which I'm really excited for because I also have some nice favorites that I want to talk about. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on my next video. Bye.